All right, it is the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started with today's webinar. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. Today's webinar topic will be information governance with a scattered workforce. We're excited that everyone can join us today. The first thing I always like to do is take a moment to introduce the speakers for today's session. My name is Shayna Horka, and I am the Product Marketing Manager here at Gimmal. I am joined by our key speaker today, Director of Sales Engineering, Dean Meisenheimer. Now, before we get started, I just want to go through a few housekeeping items before the webinar. Keep an eye out for a couple of brief poll questions. They'll be scattered throughout the webinar. The answers are completely anonymous, so feel free to be honest. We will also have a live Q&A after today's session, so please submit questions throughout the webinar, and at the end, we'll answer as many questions as we have time for. If you have any technical difficulties, please send us a message and let us know so we can help you solve any issues you may be having. Now, to kick things off, I just have one slide here to tell you a little bit about Gimmal. Gimmal is a records, information management, and governance software company that was founded in 2002. We have a client success team and global network of partners that have been delivering solutions with us for more than 18 years. Our primary technology partners are Microsoft and SAP, and our implementation partners include small specialty SIs with specific areas of expertise, as well as large global SIs and consultants like PwC and Lockheed Martin. Now to dive a little bit deeper into the problem that Gimmal software solves. The reason Gimmal exists is because we recognize that so many enterprises struggle to manage the volume of informations and systems they have. For years, they've been adding business applications and information, but haven't been able to create a consistent way to manage the life cycle of their information across these systems, or dispose of unneeded or outdated content. We understand that this makes doing business more difficult, less secure, and less compliant. Gimmal's family of software products work together to let you create an efficient digital workplace. Our comprehensive software products include records management, content governance for SharePoint, document management for SAP solutions, and Altitude, a file analysis solution. Now, without further ado, I'll go ahead and pass this over to Dean so we can go ahead and get started with the presentation.
Thank you, Shayna. So good day, everybody. Appreciate you taking the time out to join us. So let's talk a little bit about information governance in the scattered workforce. You know, there's kind of a new normal in place. You hear that term a lot these days. And it's pretty obvious when we see things like social distancing, people sitting apart, putting 6 feet between one another. You go to events, whether it's a drive-in, whether it's a concert, and again, you have social distancing in place. Sporting events, whether you're a Premier or a Bundesliga fan, whether you're a Major League Baseball fan, sporting events are happening without fans in attendance, so with empty stadiums. And actually most of us are working from home these days. And so we see more and more of that, right? And we're all kind of adapting and making adjustments and getting used to working at home, as you see the gentleman on the upper right there. And personally, if it was me, I wouldn't have my cat quite that close to my cup of coffee, but that's just my opinion. Over the course of time, some things may return closer to normal where social distancing becomes slightly less important, or sporting events may be happening where there's fans in attendance and things. But working from home, I think, is something that is going to stay more prevalent than it was 9, 12, 18 months ago. I think working from home has been kind of proven to be more effective for a lot of individuals, and companies are going to adopt that. Gimmal has seen that with some of our clients that we have spoken to. Other companies have come out publicly and said they're going to adopt more of a work-at-home model. Twitter said they've adopted a 100% work-at-home model. Mondelez, Nationwide, and others have said they will reduce the amount of office space they have, and kind of adopt this on a more permanent fashion. Interestingly enough, GitLab did a report called "The Future of Work is Remote." This was released back in March of this year. So the survey was actually done probably towards the end of last year, early this year. And the link to the report is at the bottom of the page if you'd like to download it. But they went out and they surveyed 3,000 knowledge workers across a variety of different industries in a variety of different roles. Interestingly enough, 1 out of 4 companies they surveyed already had a 100% remote work from home policy. So a pretty good cross section of industry. And most workers gave an enthusiastic thumbs up to work from home. Over half of them liked the schedule flexibility that comes with working from home. 90% said they would absolutely recommend homework to a friend. 84% said they could get all their work done just fine working remotely. And most importantly, their managers understood what it took to manage a distributed team of teleworkers. And that's important. If you've never worked from home on a consistent basis, kind of how you measure yourself, how you get stimulation and feedback, that all changes now when you're not sitting in front of somebody or in a conference room with 4 or 5 other people. You start to have to kind of measure and gather that feedback in different ways. And it also affects how we take advantage of technology and how we implement some of our policies. And I think probably the most interesting thing is 86% of the respondents, 86% said they believe remote work is the future, right? That this is here to stay. And so that brings us to our first poll question. Where are you sitting while you're viewing this webinar? Are you in your home office? Are you somewhere else at home, your kitchen table, your dining room table, sitting out on your patio because it's a lovely day? Are you at your workplace, sitting in your office or sitting in your cubicle? Or are you somewhere else? Are you sitting on a beach somewhere viewing this remotely or up in the mountains in a cabin? Where are you as you view this webinar? And we'll post the results up here live for you to see once we get them gathered. So I see somebody put a comment in the chat that working in local government, some jobs can't be done at home, and that's very true. Not every job has been applicable to a work at home environment. Most have, but not all. And so we see about 40% in the home office, 30% elsewhere at home. So about 70% of you are at home. Close to 30% are at the workplace, and somebody is somewhere else enjoying themselves, I hope. So, all right, let's move on then. With work from home comes new tools and new practices, right? Those of us who are used to working from home for extended periods of time are used to having to dial in, shows kind of my age there, connect to a virtual private network to get into the corporate network. Others who are working from home consistently for the first time, this may be the first time you've really had to deal with some of the firewalls and the VPN issues of consistent working remote. Also working at home, internet speed and quality is going to vary, not just for you, but also for your coworkers. Right? We've all probably experienced being on Zoom calls. Some people have better connectivity than others. As more people have transitioned to working from home, there are reliability issues that have cropped up, both on the corporate side, VPNs that were designed for 50 people scattered across North America suddenly didn't scale very well when it was 500 or 1,500 people all hitting the VPN at the same time, right? Or internet service providers suddenly who weren't used to spikes of internet usage during daytime hours are now seeing that, and there's more people potentially on your local network in your neighborhood, right? And you see degradation of your network speed. So quality issues start to come up, and and reliability can become an issue at times, and you have to learn how to work around that. The other issue, or the other thing that happens is, since everybody's working from home, they're not necessarily working on their company issue Windows laptop with the corporate image installed. If I'm working at home, I may choose to work from my MacBook rather than my laptop. Or I may want to work from my home computer because it's set up at a nice desk in the corner and more comfortable than working at my kitchen table with a laptop. And people start to use a variety of different applications, right? Everything's not an Office doc. Some things may suddenly be in Open Doc format. Some things may be stored in Google Docs now or Google Drive, right? So you start to see more variability in the environment than you normally do. And for your users, right, for those of us who are working at home, if you're in IT, your end user community, your users want the path of least resistance. They want to get their job done. They want to get their work done. And so they will find the fastest and easiest way to share information. And quite frankly, that means internally and externally. One of the most common mistakes that happen when working from home is, and we all do it, you prioritize speed and convenience when sharing content over governance and compliance. Right? We just want to get the information out. We want to get it shared with our coworkers. So we start to use things like OneDrive more, or Box, or we email copies of things. And kind of the review and approval process may break down a bit. It changes, right? The standard workflow tools and content sharing tools that we normally use, like SharePoint or Power Automate or Box Relay or whatever it may be, well, suddenly we revert back to doing things like emailing things, especially when we have coworkers who have flexible work schedules, right? So we're not all suddenly working maybe the same 8 to 5. We may be working staggered hours. Some people may be out part of the day because now they have other people at home that they either need to share infrastructure with or take care of. And so there's more flexibility, and it means we kind of revert to the path of least resistance. We email things around, right? At the end of the day, and I think this is true of any technology, users want the simplest approach. They want it to be non-disruptive. They want it to be simple. They don't want complex just for complexity's sake, right? And I think that's a good rule to always keep in mind. And so the end result of this is, over time, you get a little bit of information chaos. Uncontrolled copies of content starts to proliferate, right? People start to store documents and records locally. They put them on their C drive because it's more convenient than always having to connect to VPN to get to stuff. They start to use file sharing software like OneDrive or Box or others to share information. And what happens is, over the course of time, they forget about it. So here's an exercise you can do at home after the webinar. Take your tablet or take your mobile phone and go look at the download directory on your device and see how many files are in your download directory on your tablet or your mobile phone that you forgot were there, right? It's no different whether it's a laptop, MacBook, whatever it may be, right? We all do it. Stuff gets downloaded, it gets left behind. And because it's now not in the normal places, it may not fall now under retention and disposition rules, right? It may just be left out there for an extended period of time. Files that get emailed to broad distribution lists, now we start to have copies of things floating around and they get stored all over the place. Users revert to what I call, and I say revert, some of them have always done it, revert to personalized document management. They create PST files on their local hard drive, or they set up these elaborate folder structures in Exchange, and they manage everything there because it's convenient and it's easy. And so that takes us to our second poll question. Do you use personal devices or applications for business while working from home or on the road? Fair enough. Yes or no. We probably should have had a third question or third answer, which was, I'd prefer not to answer. But it's yes or no. We won't tell anybody. So we'll wait a moment for everybody to answer. And I'll own up, I absolutely use my personal devices. Sometimes I'll use my Chromebook. Sometimes I'll switch to my other computer at home, right? Which means I may be using other applications occasionally to get certain things done. So I think it's something we all do. Kind of curious to see what the response is here. And it's pretty evenly split, surprising. So 55% yes and 45% no. Interesting. All right, so how do we deal with this, and how do we figure out now what's out there when we start to get a bit of this information chaos going on? Well, that's where file analysis software comes into play. File analysis products, and this definition is from Gartner Group. File analysis products analyze, index, search, track, and report on file metadata and on file content, both, not just one or the other. And the net result is it enables organizations to take action on files according to what it was that you identified, how you classified it, how you identified what you found, and to be able to do that not just on file systems, so not just on your C drive or not just on a Windows server, but across a broad range of applications as well. File systems, network file shares, SharePoint, email, OneDrive, G Suite, Box, whatever applications you may have in your corporate environment, you want to be able to run consistent analytics across all of those. And that's where Gimmal Altitude comes into play. Altitude provides file analysis for a variety of different content sources. The benefits of Altitude is it lets you analyze files and then clean up redundant, obsolete, and trivial data, often referred to as rot, across your environment. Content can be copied, or it can be moved, it can be compressed, it can even be deleted based on the results of your analysis. You can also discover and better govern data in all of your corporate data sources. So if I find certain content that has, let's say, PII information in it, or it has certain sensitive terms in it, I may pick it up and move it to a location where it will fall under more formal retention and disposition rules, for example. I can locate and remediate sensitive data. Maybe I have a project for a new product that's in development. It's operating under a code name or a project name. All records and all documents related to that project or that code name need to be stored in one location. So I can go out and look and see if there's sensitive data in other locations like PST files or local C drives, and move that information where it belongs, delete it, or simply report on it and go to Shana and say, hey, why do you have these documents on your local drive, right? And I can classify discovered content. So I can run my analytics, I can classify and label the content, and then I can integrate that with Gimmal Records Management on the back end to provide more formal retention and disposition against my corporate file plan and my retention schedule. The way Altitude works, Altitude is a SaaS-based product, sits in the cloud. Your Altitude users log in through a web browser. Pick your browser of choice, Edge, Chrome, Firefox, whichever browser you want to use. But your Altitude users log in and set up policies, and then Altitude uses a series of connectors that are installed on Windows servers in your network, or that can be deployed out to client workstations to actually analyze your laptop's local C drive or your desktop workstation's local C drive. Right? And the connectors talk back to the Altitude web in the cloud, and then they use different agents to talk to the respective data sources. So at the local desktop level, the agents may know how to crawl and analyze PST files, how to crawl your local file system. On the server, the agents may be able to go out and talk to not only your network file shares, but your Exchange server. Look for inboxes and PST files, SharePoint Online, SharePoint On-Prem, and crawl your SharePoint sites, OneDrive, Exchange in the cloud, G Suite, Box, right? You can set up analytic policies that will go out across all of these different data sources and search and find the information, do the analytics that you want. And the way the connector works, when a connector triggers an agent, that agent knows how to talk to the respective data source. In this example, my file shares, SharePoint, and OneDrive. Could be SharePoint Online, could be any flavor of SharePoint on-premise. And the agent then goes out and searches that data source and comes back and says, here's a list of available data targets that you can run analytics against. So on the server, it's these network file share paths. In SharePoint, here are these SharePoint site collections. Out in OneDrive, here are these personal OneDrive locations. Those are what you can run your analytics against, and you can pick and choose which ones to run analytics against. So with that, let's take a quick look at altitude, and then we'll come back and we'll open it up for Q&A at the end. And if you have any questions as I go through, feel free to type them into the Q&A window, and we'll pick them up. So I'm in Firefox. I'm going to log into Gimmal Altitude, put in my username and my password, and that takes me to the Altitude dashboard. Here I can see the connectors that are installed. I can see how many data sources there are out there, and I can see how many individual data targets that I've identified. If I click on the connectors, that takes me to a screen that shows me all of the individual connectors that are configured. And since this is a demo environment, I only have two. I have one running on a Windows server. I have a second one running on my local laptop. And the one on my local laptop only has one agent looking at one source, the file system, and it's found 3 targets, locations on my local C drive. The one running on my server is doing more of the heavy lifting. It has 7 different data sources identified. And if we look at those, I can see it's connected to Exchange in the cloud, Gmail, G Suite Gmail, G Suite Google Drive, OneDrive, MAPI for PST files, SharePoint, and Windows file shares. And you can see for each one of these how many different data targets it has found that that it knows about in each one of these respective data sources. And if I click on targets, it'll show me the list. So for Exchange Web Services, here are the 4 mailboxes that it found. Again, demo environment. In a production environment, this could be 400, could be 4,000, right? I actually found a discovery search mailbox I didn't know I had out there. So I learned something when I ran my own search. If I want to see all of the data targets, I can click the nav bar here on the left, and it shows me a list of all of the data targets that have been discovered by all the different agents. There's my Gmail mailboxes, there's Google Drive, there's my OneDrive locations, all my PSTs, SharePoint, and so forth. And so after I've got all my available data targets, that's where I set up my governance policies. This is where I can come in and I can define workflows that control how the analytics are done. So this is where I can come in and I can see I've got workflows that go out and target different data sources, my file system, my G Suite emails, my Exchange Online. And if I want to view one of these workflows, I just click on it. Workflows go through a set of sequences. So for Exchange Online, it's going to process each mailbox. In each mailbox, it's going to come through and process each folder in that mailbox. It's going to look at each folder and find each email message. And then it's going to come through and test actually the email and do multiple tests. The first test is it's going to go out and look for expressions like, I'm looking for Social Security information. Does it have SSN or the word Social Security, or it uses a regular expression to look for Social Security numbers? If it finds any of those, it sets a property that tells me which test was positive, and then it captures a number of values about the file and writes those to a report that I can view later on. If it doesn't find that, it goes off and now it starts to look for credit card information, again, by credit card name or by credit card number pattern. And if it doesn't find that, it comes out and the last thing it does is test the message date. But if any of these tests are true, it always captures the values and generates a report for me. My workflows then get wrapped in policies, and the policies are what control how the workflow gets executed. So here's my policy for my email. If we click on that, the first thing we see is we have a descriptive name, and we have comments that give it a little more descriptive information. We then can pick from the list of available workflows we've created that we want this policy to execute. We can run it in live mode or in test mode. We could skip mailboxes that are on hold. Then I can pick and choose from the list of data targets. Again, I don't have to run against every mailbox out there. Maybe I only want to go out and interrogate Dean's mailbox with this particular analysis. I can set these up to run on schedules, so they can run once a week, once a day, once a month, however often I need them to. And then when the policies are done executing, I get a report at the end. We kind of looked at that in the workflow. And the report simply comes back and shows me the list of matching items. And then if I click, I can see the results of the report. So I return the information for every matching email, tell me the mailbox it was in, tell me which test was positive, tell me the subject. Maybe I want to sort my report by the value found column. Here's one where it found PCI information. It was sent by Dean to Dean. Here's the date the email was received. I can scroll down through my report. If I want to see full text of the email, if we captured full text in the policy, we can come in and look and see what information matched. And for any of my policies that were run, I can come in here and see all of the reports. And I have all of the historical reports. So if I wanted to look, for example, at my results of my SharePoint, well, let me come in here and take a look at SharePoint files that are over a certain age. Now I can see the site name, the file name, when the document was last modified, when it was created. So now I can start to see historical information. The next step after data governance is I can also do classification. Classification works the same way, where it uses workflows and policies, but it also can then assign a label to information based on the results of your analysis. So I can have my analysis come in and go, oh, I found certain terms or words in this document that make me think it's a contract. I'm going to label it that way. Or I found sets of documents based on words in the document like FOB, payment terms, ship to, that make me think this is an invoice or a purchase order, right? Or maybe I found personal health information, right? I found certain terms that would indicate that. So I can label those documents accordingly. And then, as I talked about earlier, Gimmal Records Management can use those labels to further classify the records against your retention schedule and to trigger retention. And then lastly, because I have all of this information about all my documents and records across various data sources, I can see reports and I can see dashboards of information in my analytics. So I can create custom dashboards. I can come in, take a look at my dashboard, and here kind of at a glance, I can quickly see, oh, show me my file count by age. If I hover over the bar, I've got 436,000 files that are 1 to 3 years old. I've got 452,000 that are less than 1 year old. Or if I want to come down here and look at emails by age, I've got almost 8 megs of emails that are 1 to 3 years old. I've got 35 megs that are less than a year old, which is probably a good thing. People aren't hanging on to stuff. All right. So let's go back to the slides now, and we'll wrap things up and open it up for questions. So I'll leave you with a few points to ponder, things to think about. First, how are your employees and your colleagues sharing information? Are you starting to get more things through email? Are you starting to get links to things stored in Box now? Or how are people starting to share information with you? Has that changed versus 6 months ago? Are corporate systems easily accessible from outside the building? Is it easy to get into VPN? Can you connect to SharePoint if you're outside the building? If there are corporate systems you need to get to, are they easy to get to? If everything's in the cloud, that makes it a lot easier, right? Where's information now being stored, right? Are people putting things into the same locations or into the corporate repositories now versus 6 months ago? And then how much rogue content is out there compared to 6 months ago? If you ran analytics across all of your different data sources in January and you ran the same analytics today, how different would those pie charts look, right? Would they be significantly different or would they be the same? And that's where file analytics come into play. So with that, I'm going to, Shana, turn it back over to you for questions and answers.
Thanks, Dean. Okay, so the first question we have in our chat box is, does altitude remain on users' equipment after the scanning and classifications have been annotated and the data migration or harmonization has been completed?
That essentially is up to you. If you want to do the scanning on a consistent basis and have it run once a month or run once a quarter, you would leave the connector and the agents deployed out to the individual user's equipment. If it's going to be kind of a one and done, then you could uninstall the connector and the agents from the user's workstation. It's entirely up to you.
Okay, and the next one is, can your product analyze laptops and personal devices?
Yeah, that's kind of what the previous question was referring to as well. So I can deploy the connector and agents to a laptop or to a desktop machine, and I can do that in an automated fashion. Obviously, if I had 1,000 employees, I don't want to go install it one by one. I can do a push and push that deployment out of the connectors to all the individual machines.
Okay, and the next one is, what is ROT?
ROT is, I mentioned that at the beginning, ROT is kind of an industry term that stands for information that is redundant, obsolete, or trivial. And typically when you're beginning a migration to a new system, maybe you're coming off file shares to, and you want to move things to OneDrive, or you're moving from SharePoint on-premise to SharePoint online, or any type of a migration, one of the reasons you do analysis is to remove the ROT. Because if you have a terabyte of information and 30% of that is ROT, you don't want to spend time and money migrating information that you're just going to have to get rid of later.
Great. And the next one is, can Altitude move or delete files?
It can. So one of the actions you can set up in a workflow is to copy files to a new location, move the files to a new location, compress a file, or delete the file. So it can take any of those actions. And you can run a workflow, you can run a policy in test mode first. So if you are going to have it delete or move information, you can test it first to see what it would pick up and do.
Great. And the last one, unless someone sneaks one in before we're done, is, can Altitude work on Apple products and Android smartphones or tablets?
Today, the connectors run on Windows servers or Windows devices. I will have to check on, I know today it doesn't run on smartphones and tablets. I will have to check on the plans for both mobile support as well as Mac OS support for the connectors. So that we'll get a follow-up answer to you on kind of the future there.
Great, and that is the last one. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. If anyone has any further questions that you can think of following the webinar, feel free to email Dean. His email address is right there on the slide. Or you can email us at info@gimmal.com or visit us on our website, also on the slide. And for those of you who are interested in a recording of today's webinar, we'll make this available via a thank you email within 24 to 48 hours. Oops, wait, it looks like one more. Nope, that was it. Just a thank you message. Well, thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for joining, everybody.